Okay, this problem is going to involve a little bit of PEMDAS, and everybody's been used to seeing those lately. But it's not completely about that. This is about quadratics, the quadratic formula, and solving for quadratics when you're given them. This is kind of Algebra 2 level stuff. I have a relative who is working on quadratics right now, so I thought I'd make this video. She kind of inspired me. So let's talk about what is a quadratic. Well, a quadratic is, we're just going to do the simple terms here, is when you get a formula like this. We have a coefficient x squared plus a coefficient x plus a constant equaling to 0. Now these are useful in geometry and calculus, but I don't want to get into everything they're useful for because then it gets complex and I want to concentrate on solving these. And the reason that these are difficult to solve, or would be difficult to solve if we didn't have the quadratic equation, is because you have two different powers of x here. So they're not like terms, you can't combine them. When you try to balance out one, like maybe taking a square root to get this to just be x, and you wind up with this being square root of x, and you're going to wind up with just a big old mess. So that's where the quadratic formula comes in. And the worst thing for this for me when I was in high school was memorizing it because my teacher wouldn't let us have a formula sheet. Nowadays, like I said, since you have every formula under the sun located in your pocket in your cell phone, it's not really that important to memorize formulas. It's much more important to be able to use them. So our quadratic formula reads x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of the quantity b squared minus 4ac, which means you have to take this whole thing before you take the square root of it. And that whole thing is divided by 2a. Now a, b, and c, as you can see up here, I've kind of got it color-coded, come from the coefficients and the constant here in the quadratic that you've been given. Couple things to look at here. Like I was saying earlier, you can't just square root b and square root 4ac and subtract the two. Because they're both under one square root symbol, you have to take this whole quantity, figure it out, kind of like PEMDAS, where you have to figure this first, and then take the square root of that. And same thing with this quantity here, the negative b plus minus square root, is all over 2a, so you have to have this whole quantity divided by this. Excuse me. The other thing to look at here is we have a plus or minus. That means you got to do the problem twice. Not the whole thing. Once you get down to where you get the numbers, then you have to make sure that you add this to this as well as subtract this from this. And this can come out a couple different ways. Sometimes you'll come out with a positive number and a negative number, and certain applications you can use that. Certain applications you're dealing with an answer that's in a real environment and can only have positive numbers, so you're able to throw the negative number out. It really depends on what you're working. The standard, though, unless you're told that you're working in an environment where positives only are allowed, is to go ahead and use both your positive and negative answers if you get ones that are on two different sides of 0. So we're going to go ahead and fill in A, B, and C with real numbers and do an example. And I'm going to clear this out because I'm going to do this step by step instead of combining steps, because I hate it when teachers skip steps. Even if you are keeping up, it can get to be confusing. So I'm going to try and keep it color coded if I can remember to do that. This also works. I know the example I showed had plus, but it also works if you have a minus in there. The important thing is that you have x squared, x, and then a constant. So the sign in between these is not as important. What's most important is that you have the setup where you have an x squared, an x, and then a constant. And if it helps you think of 2, 1, 0, this is the same as having x to the 0 there, because x to the 0 is always equal to 1, and whatever this number is times 1 would just be that number. But if it helps you remember 2, 1, 0. So, okay, we have this, and we have our a, b, and c, and so now we have to plug them into the quadratic formula. So, as we know, it starts with x equals negative b, and we bring this sign down here, whether it's positive or negative, since this is negative. We do like that. Plus or minus the square root of, is negative b squared? I think it's, no, it's just b squared. And since we're squaring it, we're always going to get a positive value. So anyway, it's important if you're putting this into a calculator to make sure you put parentheses around this so it knows that you mean the quantity negative 8 squared, as in negative 8 times negative 8. Otherwise, calculators think you mean 8 times 8 and then take it to the negative. Okay, so minus 4 times a, which means c is a positive 2, times c, which again we bring that down here with a negative 24. Okay, and all of this is over 2 times a, which again is our positive 2. Now these numbers, like the 2 and the 4 that I've left in the black, those are ones that aren't coming from our quadratic equation. That aren't coming from here. They're already in this formula that we're given. They don't change based on this. That's why I left them in black. So let's clean this up a little bit, as my professor would say. I'm going to put a little line here. Okay. So negative 8 times negative 1 is just going to be 8. So we're going to go ahead and clean that up to prevent confusion. Now under our square root, we got negative 8 squared. Well, negative 8 times negative 8 is 64. So we're doing our exponent like we would under PEMDAS. So minus 4. And then 2 times negative 24 would be negative 48. And since those are combined, I'm going to give them a nice bright new color. To go under. And again, you could go ahead and combine all this, but I'm doing it step by step. 2 times 2 is 4, and since those numbers are now combined, I'm going to give it a new color too. Okay, so next step. Like I said, you can actually combine these two steps I'm about to do, this one and the next one, but I'm just doing it step by step to try and keep everything as clear as possible. So we bring down our 8, plus or minus square root 64, if I did my math correctly. I believe 8 squared is 64. Minus, okay, 4 times negative 48. Let me pull out my handy calculator here and make sure that my numbers are right. $192. Okay. So this is negative 192. And all of this is still over 4. Now, you could always combine these two steps instead of doing negative 48 and then multiplying it times the 4. But again, I'm just doing it small steps to keep everything clear. About to erase this so I can come back up here to the top and work. But again, you can rewind the video if you have questions about where we got anywhere. Again, you can always throw something in the comments if you have any questions about how we got to where we are. I'm going to leave our original equation up there. If this comes out nice, then we will come back and plug x in. The site that I got this example off of, I believe it does come out nicely. Okay, so next step. Again, since we're taking little baby steps with this, I know. So if you're good at math, skip over some of these steps if you're not going to get confused in the arithmetic. So minus square root. Okay, now we've got to take 64 and subtract negative 192 from it, which is the same as adding. because you have two negatives. So you're going to wind up with the square root of, I'm out of color, so we're going to keep representing this in red. Square root of 256. And I hope my calculator does square roots. Oh, good. Square root. Oh, good. It comes out nice. Okay. Sorry. Again, that's all over 4. So I'm going to get rid of this now. We've moved it up there. Okay, next step, let's take our square root. So x equals 8 plus or minus the square root of 256 happens to be 16. Came out nice and even. And again, all that. Let me clear that up a little bit. Let me knock that 4 back a little bit. Let me knock this down just a little bit so it's a little clearer. Now, as I was saying, the square root of 256 is 16. So somebody made this problem up so the answers come out nice. Okay. 8 plus or minus 16, and all that is over 4. So now we have to, comes to the part where we got to solve twice. You know, we got all our numbers, but we got to do once 8 plus and once 8 minus. So what we do is we break this out. That's probably not the best way to do this. Let's do this sideways. We break this out into 2 equations. One being 8 plus 16 divided by 2, and the other being 8 minus 16. I'm sorry, not divided by 2. I don't know where I got 2 from. Divided by 4. So that should answer a whole lot of questions of how did you get that? Divided by 4. And then we solve each one of these separately. So I'm just going to write in black because we're combining numbers now. So 8 plus 16 is what? 24. 6 plus 4 is 20. At least 4 over, yeah, 24. So you have 24 divided by 4, which equals 6, I think. I'm pretty sure on that answer. Yeah, 6. Whew. Crazy brain. Not enough coffee. Okay, 8 minus 16 gives us negative 8 divided by 4, which gives us negative 2. Again, any questions about how we got from here to here, please put them in the comments and I'll try and clarify. Okay, so we've solved down to the point where we have values for x. And we're assuming that this is not one of those problems where we can toss out the negative value. Like I said, that sometimes if you use this for a real world application where you can't have a negative, you can just toss the answer out and you know 6 is your x. But we're assuming that that's not the case this time. We're assuming that this is one of the times when you will have negatives allowed. So, what we're going to do now, we know that x equals 6 or negative 2. It can equal either one. And it probably really shouldn't put that or in there, but so because both of these are valid values for x, again, unless you're told specifically you aren't allowed to use the negative. So what we do now is we go back to this. That's why I left this up here. I'm going to erase this. Again, rewind the video if you need to see anything. We're going to take our values for x and we're just going to plug them in where we see x up here. Now, again, I'm just going to write in black because we're just plugging in numbers. So 2, and then we're going to plug in 6. So 2 times 6 squared minus 8 times 6 minus 24 equals 0. And this should even out. This is your double check. This should equal 0 when you do it. So let's see, that'd be 2 times 36 minus 24 minus 24, 0. No, minus 32. Whew! Not enough coffee. At least that's what I'm going to blame today. I didn't have my coffee today. So, that and I've always been terrible at 8s. I don't know why, but the 8 multiplication tables has just always messed me up. Okay, so we got 36 times 2 gives us 72 minus 48 minus 24. Well, 48 and 24 together are 72. So 72 minus 48 is 24 minus 24, which equals 0. Since you have 0 on both sides, so you have 0 equals 0. It's correct, so you know that answer works. And if you want to double check your other number, you just come back and hopefully my math will work a little better this time. My brain's a little worn out. Okay, so we're going to come in and plug in our other number. And make sure to square -2, not square 2, and then put a negative in it, especially if you're using a calculator, because the calculator will get confused. Okay, so -2 squared is 4. 8 times -2 is -16. Okay, so 2 times 4 is 8, plus 16, because we have these two negatives, minus 24, which equals 0. Well, 16 plus 8, as we said earlier, is 24. And 24 minus 24, and you have 0 on both sides, so that number checks. So that tells us these are both good values for x, again, unless you're in an application where you're told you can't use the negative. So that's quadratics, kind of the, in a nutshell, quick 20-minute version of it. Almost 20-minute version of it. So, if you haven't and you'd like to, hit that subscribe button so you know when new videos come out. If you have any questions about what we did in any of these steps, or if you got lost somewhere, put it in the comments. I'll be happy to try and clarify anything that's confusing people. So, again, also be trying to come up with some more videos, try to do some little higher level stuff, maybe starting to get some calculus as well if anybody's interested in that. Just again, put it in the comments or on the page, and I will see you next time.